What's up, guys? Thanks as always for supporting the show. It would mean a lot to me if you would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any more of our videos. Also, make sure you follow us all over social media so you don't miss any of our content or show announcements. Denver beat Oklahoma City with a ridiculous defensive run in the second half. So the way they kind of configured things, they had Payton Watson on Chet Holmgren, right? I talk a lot about how the game is a copycat league, right? And we saw Boston just regularly throughout the season last year just put Tatum on centers and put their center on the weakest above the break shooter for the other team. And here we go. Denver, as with many other teams that we've seen around the league this year, are copying that strategy. They would put Jokic on the weakest above the break shooter, in this case, either Lou Dort or Alex Caruso. And then they put Payton Watson on Chet Holmgren. Then they put their best on-ball defender on Shai. In this case, it was either Christian Braun or Payton Watson. So then they're pressuring the ball. You have Jokic kind of consistently hanging around the basket in help and in defensive rebounding situations. Payton Watson's ability to switch ball screens should they need to. It just, especially since Christian Braun is big and strong enough and Russell Westbrook are big and strong enough to switch onto a forward or a center like Chet Holmgren, right? And it just gave them like a good defensive foundation to work on. And they were incredible defensively in the second half of this game against Oklahoma City. I wanted to spend some time talking about Payton Watson and help side because, you know, I talk about, do you remember when Sam Vecini came on the show right after the NBA Finals last year? And we talked about the most important thing that we learned about the NBA last season. And one of the things that Sam Vecini talked about was the idea of ground coverage. And essentially, if you think of it like NBA offenses are so damn good that, and the star players are so damn good that you're constantly having to be aggressive in your defensive coverages, right? Like you're pressuring the ball, chasing over the top. In ball screens, you're bringing the guy up, your screen defender up to the level of the screen. You're digging down off the ball. It's a lot of like shrinking the floor on the star, which creates opportunities for, you know, skip passes, swing passes, drop-off passes to cutters, things along those lines, right? And so your help side defense, the ability to have a player, in this case, a guy like Payton Watson, who can feasibly cover so much ground that even when it looks like there are openings, there aren't actually openings. That is the hallmark of a truly great defense. There were multiple situations in this game where Payton Watson was like playing the middle ground between a guy rolling to the basket and a skip pass for three. And they both look kind of open, right? And it's like, I'm going to hit the cutter here. And it's, you know, Alex Caruso right under the basket. And Payton Watson just shoots over and swallows the shot up, right? Or it's like, oh, I'm going to make this swing pass. Payton's digging pretty far down into the elbow. I'm going to make this swing pass to the shooter above the break. Nope. Payton's shooting out there on a closeout, and it's just completely gone, right? Like, that is what makes the truly elite defenses so great, is even when they appear to give openings, they aren't really openings. And that comes down to athleticism and help side in the ability to cover ground. Payton Watson was unbelievable in help in this game. And then once again, down the stretch, biggest play of the game, OKC cuts it to 2, right? Russell Westbrook picks up Shai Gilgeous-Alexander all the way out, like way out past the three-point line. And again, like he got beat off the dribble, but it's one of those things where like when you're going against the best of the best, like this isn't RJ Barrett, okay? This is one of the top 5 players in the NBA. You're going to get beat one way or another. You're either going to get beat with a pull-up jump shot or you're going to get beat off the dribble, right? But if it's a pull-up jump shot, you give Shai an opportunity to get comfortable, right? You're playing off of him. Maybe he can get comfortable and he can get to a look, right? But if you press him and you make him drive, you can plan for that in help side defense. And I thought that was really interesting. Again, a guy like RJ Barrett, you can trust Russ to kind of cover both bases by himself. But with the matchup against a guy like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I thought it was smart. Picked him up far out, like he was well outside the three-point line, forced Shai to drive, and he drove right into the teeth of the defense where Payton Watson was able to meet him with verticality and get a big-time block. Unbelievable defensive possession at the end of that game. Unbelievable defense throughout the entire second half for the Denver Nuggets. Russell Westbrook, 29 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, tons of rim pressure and playmaking. He had one of those games where everything was really clicking for him. He had 3 threes as well, made several huge defensive plays. We talked about the play on Shai. He also stripped Shai in the second half on a drive along the right side, close to the baseline. As I talked about before the season, there was a lot of Russell Westbrook's floor at the start of the season, right? Like really, really ugly games. And even throughout that, what did I consistently tell you guys? Like this is the Russell Westbrook experience. His floor is substantially lower than Reggie Jackson's, but his ceiling is substantially higher than Reggie Jackson's. And there have been a few games this year where he's put it all together and it's like, holy shit, you got another star last night. How many players in the NBA can realistically put up 29, 6, and 6 even once, right? Like there's maybe 30, 40, maybe 50 guys in the entire NBA who are capable of putting together that stat line. And you got that last night from a really discounted contract off of your bench. And so, again, that's the Russell Westbrook experience. There's going to be games where it's really ugly, but there's also going to be games where he's able to do things that very few players in the league can do. And on a game like last night with Jamal Murray out, you win that game because of Russell Westbrook, and you don't if he's not there, right? You lose that game with Reggie Jackson. And so that's part of the upside of the Russell Westbrook experience. Christian Braun, this is something that, you know, again, part of the deal with this show is I'm right about a lot of stuff some of the time, and then I'm wrong about a lot of stuff some of the time, right? So it's like, it's part of the deal. And one of the things that I've been really keyed in on since the start of this, since this offseason is like, I think Christian Braun is a great fit with the starters. He's very different from KCP. He's fundamentally different archetype of player, right? On the defensive end, Christian Braun is a bigger, stronger athlete who's a little more versatile, but maybe not quite as quick at the point of attack, right? But I think he's more versatile because he can switch and can guard bigger athletes. Like, for instance, he can match up with Anthony Edwards in a way Kentavious Caldwell-Pope never can, right? But they're different types of players, right? You go to the other end of the floor on offense, and it's like, no, he's not the shooter that KCP is. No, he's not the guy that can come off of a dribble handoff and rise up from 15 feet and knock down the jumper the way that KCP can. No, he can't run in transition to the corner, knock down a corner three off the move as well as KCP can. But what he can do is he can screen and he can cut and he can just bring waves of athleticism to the offensive end of the floor. And he has consistently been a plus offensive player in this lineup, just with his athletic activity, not just taking catch and shoot threes, but driving closeouts and getting all the way to the rim. One of the things that they spammed at the end of this game, the Nuggets basically closed this game by just spamming Jokic post-ups against Chet, getting the double team and playing out of it. And one of the things Christian Braun did consistently is when they would rotate, so like basically it'd be post entry to Jokic, and sometimes OKC would botch it where they would just help one pass away. Like they did that once late with Michael Porter Jr., and Michael Porter Jr. hit a three. But when they had their windshield wiper rotations down, meaning like what they would do is it would be Michael Porter Jr. throws the post entry, there's a double team, the next guy slides over, the next guy slides over. As soon as Christian Braun's man would slide over, Christian Braun would slash to the front of the rim, and then after it was usually like Strawther who was like cutting through. As Strawther would cut through, he would replace up to the wing where Christian Braun just was. In like as Christian Braun cut, he'd either get open and finish, which he did, or he would drag multiple defenders on his cut, because cutting is a form of rim pressure. If you're a good cutter who can finish and you just run hard to the front of the rim, help defenders will come with you. And then they would have openings in the skip pass situations, right? But like it was just like Christian Braun throughout this entire season has demonstrated, again, it's not been a perfect stretch for the Nuggets front office, right? Like they've lost some depth on their bench. It's been a lot of trust in young players. There's been a disconnect with the coaching staff about how to use those young players. It has not been perfect, but I do think letting Kentavious Caldwell-Pope go and Christian Braun kind of slotting into that starting spot and being a feasible starter, that was a gamble for a front office on a financial level that I thought made some sense. And it worked. And Christian Braun is playing really, really good basketball right now. But again, everyone hit big shots off of those Jokic double teams. Like I talked about, Michael Porter Jr. hit a big three, one pass away. Payton Watson hit a big three. Julian Strawther has been actually hitting some big shots for this team. He had like a massive lead-changing layup against the Toronto Raptors in like a tough defense situation late game. That was a big shot. Hit a big three in the late third quarter of this game to cut the lead down to 3. And then just he brings another wave of athleticism too. He had a tip slam in transition where he was just trailing a play. Really, really impressive win for the Denver Nuggets to get one back from that Oklahoma City team that dominated them on opening night. On the Oklahoma City front, I thought they settled for a lot of tough pull-up jumpers in the second half. They were actually 12 for 33 from 2 in the second half of this game. So a lot of like tough, difficult shots in the short to mid range. Took a lot of step back jump shots with a lot of time on the shot clock. They had 7 turnovers. They gave up 9 offensive rebounds, but it's their first loss of the season. So I don't think it's worth really overreacting to. And again, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has a shot to tie the game late, right? So no reason for panic in Oklahoma City town. But one of the things I wanted to talk about that I thought was interesting in this game, and this is something I've seen kind of periodically throughout the season, but the Thunder are doing something really interesting on offense that I haven't seen around the league actually yet. And it's kind of like, so we talk about like Spain or stack pick and roll. Spain or stack pick and roll is where you have, Shai running a ball screen, let's call it with Chet, or really, let's just say any team. So let's say it's Jamal Murray with Chet, or Jamal Murray with Jokic, and there's the ball screen. And as Jokic is rolling, or they usually will do it with like a more athletic type of rim runner. But as the screener is rolling to the basket, you have a shooter underneath the rim who's either just replacing to the top of the key, meaning he's just running to the top of the key, or is back screening for Jokic as he's going to the top of the key. You'll also see variations of it where the roll man actually screens for the shooter coming up. But it's basically a 3-man interchange, right? That's all stack or Spain is, right? It's just ball handler, ball screen, shooter, and then the screener and the shooter replace as the ball handler is working downhill. Well, one of the things that the Thunder were doing a lot last night, and something they've been doing a lot this season that I think is super fascinating, is they're running Spain or stack, or like kind of that 3-man interchange where there's a ball screen and a shooter and they're just replacing as they're rolling. They're running that with all 3 guards while their forwards are in the corners. What I think is really fascinating about this is most teams run out of guard defenders, right? So most teams don't have 3 really good guys to guard guards. And so what they're doing is they're putting you in a predicament where you have to navigate a bunch of switches. And one, you might just make a mistake where somebody botches a switch and someone gets wide open. Or 2, somewhere in that scrum, that weakest defender is going to be slightly out of position. You can swing to whoever he's on, and that guy can quickly look to attack. But it's kind of a really fascinating approach to modern basketball. One of the things I talk about with running action is just as much about trying to get a defense to make a mistake as it is to kind of like get into the flow of your offense. Like a lot of times you just run a 3-man interchange just to see if they fuck up. And if they fuck up, then you get that really big initial advantage, or maybe a great look early in the possession. But like, thought it was kind of an interesting offensive approach from Oklahoma City, and something I'm going to be keeping an eye on, not just for them, but around the rest of the league here in the early part of the season.